the street is my world. I don't pretend to go uptown and be anything fancy. I can, but I find more real in the world that I'm in than I do the tinsel. And the real world is the one I have to deal with every day. You know? Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of it left. Let the bass kick.
Playtime been over since y'all dropped the ball. Bound to the continent, there's no asylum for y'all. Pushing the black Asiatic game with Fort L and Pool Bay. Before NOI, I rep draw L all day. How many fakes proclaim to be the reincarnation and claim to be the true head of the Moorish nation? No mention of being ill, but I read his letters. Dirty Moors mad cause they thought they dead as letters. Many were there when decisions were handed down. Now they claim that me Leo was not ordained, not commissioned, not called or appointed. With divine plans for ages, but Dirty Moors making changes. Working with FBI during infiltrations. In a pheasant alleys giving bogey smoke inhalations. And secret walls were made, heads are made in public mentions. Don't believe, get the minutes of the first convention. Kirkman and Lomax Bay got called out as villains against the Prophet's order and L. Paul Gibbons. Thousands of Moorish Americans followed those leaders that killed the prophet and made Moors parrots not readers. They don't study, brains hollow. To crush the truth, plant dissension in the ones that follow. Robbed the treasury, felt like they hit the lotto. Took advantage of the faithful Moors in their times of sorrow. Moments still critical 100 years later, the message. Stick to the principles in your actions, be progressive. Don't sell your soul for a title, take your membership role. Watch out for grand cheats pushing you in a censorship hole. The sellout was great, now they come here and won't get the hell out. Active Moors come around, they get clumsy. Not hungry, but act grumpy and jumpy. Active Moors see them touchy and think it's lovely. With faces ugly, I push back so don't shove me. If not for love, it would be just as Dirty Moors get from me. Hitting all reincarnates and writs of discovery and demanding the treasury recovery and law for money. Wearing affairs don't make you a Moorish adept. Dirty Moorish heads are Boy Scouts and cadets. Working for FBI inspectors, slaves for gadgets. Claiming they got pulled, but they really dead magnets. Running a fraud that's done cause new Moors are here. One for all for one profit like musketeers. Bay, not Tampa or Buccaneers. I strike nerves like harp strings on those puppeteers. Pushing misconceptions as teachers and calling it facts. Swinging my scimitar, tongue not a fireman's axe. Quick to call me out as dirty, say I violate acts. If you don't nationalize, know that I annihilate blacks. Nailing through their palms and insects on beams of wood. Burn crosses on black lawns in my Moorish hood. Black Klansmen like movie from 1960. White power, not supremacy like Clayton Bigsby. Now I run through illusions, battling my arch nemesis, misconfusion. She's been trying to keep me out of course, facing losses, calling all her negative forces. 99 years past, Drew Ali said 50 would pass, and you wouldn't know about me, or even know what I brought for you. NOI and UNIA knew about him too. Most thought that they could bury the movement, be in charge, passive and abuse it. But Drew said new Moors would come with eyes open, seeing and knowing, far from hoping. Far from belief in faith, master fruition. Study the laws of nature, activate intuition. One day our wheels of industry will stop, and when it starts again, Moors will be on top. Drew Ali blessed with latent power. Warned you, get out the way or be ground to powder. Drew Ali didn't kill you fast, but he brought you your title and escape fast. Confusion continues to confuse, no remembrance of Maghrib al-Aqsa by Moorish descendants. I run through illusions, battling my arch nemesis, misconfusion. She's been trying to keep me out of course, facing losses, calling all her negative forces.
And conscious means that you're conscious of what's going on in this world. You're fully aware and awake to what's going on in this world. That's what conscious rap means. So if you got conscious rap, that means you got unconscious rap. That means you got motherfuckers that's unconscious rapping. That means they sleeping. They still under a spell of the Bible. They still under the spell of King.
Call me brother man, I'm not the rubber man. Though I keep my Nazis in affairs, rap with some rubber bands. Burning out the Ku Klux Klan and Wizard Grand, Dairy Queen misters. Just butts of guns I'm giving. Trying to make more sovereign citizens, these minions. Help kill your prophet, stole your treasury millions. You heard it from your brother man. Now the smothers sell out. Test links and K2 push days keep me red out. I got the knowledge to make these silly hoes question the pimping directors of music videos. Gaylords and persons with strap-on boots with heels. Too much graphic art faces. Boobs are not real. Since MCM and Troop, they use Timberland boots to get us all caught up in fashion, not the simple men roots. Got our people on dogmatic, not metaphysic. Exoteric, not esoteric is how you missed it. So out of it, you couldn't feel the natural mystic blowing through the air like it didn't give a shit. I hear the dirty moors dissing, cause I said profanities. A lot of these grand sheets need to take off the panties. Pull the thong out your crack fest wearing sash ass nigga. Return to where the prophet found the Negro ass nigga.
It's time to choose a side. You either positive or you negative. You either evil or you good. You understand what I'm saying? Choose a side, nigga. I know what side I'm on.
I throw a Molotov at the priest that works for the beast. All they want is our people to rest in peace. No intention of allowing more stress to ease. Cracker won't go home to spread himself the disease. Genocidal epidemic kill us in high proportions. Instead of mummified, we stay boxed in coffins. Mayors attend funerals for PR purposes. Where's the police escort? He replied with nervousness. He said, I don't have those numbers or connections to have Metro Police lead your friend's funeral procession. That's coming from Mr. Mayor, black community player. No question in the hoods dropping off boxes of weapons. Then blame black on black crime or natural causes. Plus those doctors aren't out on point but off a bit. Natural mystics prove they're not holistic. Hypocrite oaths make your children autistic.
I'm at the point now where I'm saying I'm tired of mixing the medicine with the food. I'm tired of playing that game. Now I'm shoving straight medicine down your fucking throat, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Straight doses of medicine and then shove down your throat. I don't give a fuck if it turns you off or not. But if it do turn you off, then you're stupid, ignorant motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying?
Don't judge like a cover of your favorite book. Visit you in your dream can with the hook. Paralysis overtook. So shook, stop, look, listen with precision. MC on a mission, vision, past senses and endless. Cycle with active Morse, beat you with facts senseless. Have your mind defenseless when the truth enters. Outflow reminds me of Omar Bay, Algonquin embers. Tap your pioneer out what some man remembers. All the lies told to your mind dismembers. Circle broken into quadrants, you the seven in the center. Compass G between the square, Baphomet of Templars. Warlock, call on my witch mothers to maim them. The same wise spirits burned at stakes in Salem. Torture with vagina pair, survive, bobbing for apples. Contort thumb, slide wrist out, tight shackles.
I always got something deep to say.
Sorry for the getting rid.
What? What?
I'm rockets. Who says we ain't in the building? Who says we ain't in the building? We the Moorish master masons, architects for your children, rapping Friday 30s like Jason without the killing. But we promote life, oh, it's all about the feeling. And we invoke light, yo, we them light beings. Though you might see him on the block getting this caution, might be talking to cops, giving them caution. Occasionally wearing his fez when he's walking, see the turning heads. Whispering, gawking, but he's locked in and he's zoned out while we boxed in our own house.
Study the mystics, the adepts, the magi. Wisdom of the ancients can uncalcify us. Possible mission, free mental numbness. Extract the substance with minds of darkness. Use the source, don't care what's on purport. As we know by being told, man knows not. Many before the floor, souls got bought. Placed in the devil's hands, rule in the seven lands. To dogma rituals, Negro spirituals. Brainwash subliminal, keeps thinking to a minimal. They still criminal. In a world digital so pitiful. Mental survival so critical, it's visible. Can you see past life as rock? Hashtag zombies with waves of cyberpunk. No need for cell phones, they speak from soft arms. It's nothing for alarm, chips and forearms.
Wind, grass, and bass, such a beautiful serenade. Women feeding me grapes, I'm feeding the Henry serenade. Whether this night is clear or gray, rain when you hear a faith, giving life to see. Speaking through what I hear today. Show you the future in a glance. Then I was looked to these holes like hallucinatory gifts. Sun walked the desert, been more of a since I found God. Look back, used to see his prince. Forget being a prince, I'm a G. OD, grown man, no Jody. Deny it, you don't know me. Don't make me tap into the old me. That's like a couple hundred years. Walk around town with a couple hundred peers and release the peace of up fears. The sun gon' shine for what fears? This young brother here just trying to get his third eye clear.
Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind, body, and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks. Conscious thinking and living and then attack. This deep. Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind, body, and unleash. Real life rap, spitting on the track. Conscious thinking, living and then attack.
So as the moon sets, the sun takes its place. It spoons on blocks, inspired spots, fill spaces. Real rap, rats, who got cases. Fire stain the corridors of flannel faces. Game changers, rule benders, and no pretenders. Style benders, channel my vibe through the vibe with optic lenses. Send a message to our veterans. Soldiers up and get it in. We on our birds, we on merge, subliminal beings. Third eye seeing, still I participate unwilling.
They wanna break me, shake back lady. Going with my name B, double OMG. SON is crazy. For a minute that you think you could take me for a fool like a native to his land. Being schooled by a foreign dude. If mistaken me, spiders on the roof. In the dark trees, I've been saying you mistaken me. To better move or I mark it. Poetry is my tongue, to resistance to target. Revealing all lies and deceit on the market. Genocide, carry out in politics, I love it. Down bulldozer, give it to Goliath, it's an exposure. I some big heads healing and it's getting closer to your downfall. Round up on your soldiers.
Little homie, I was seeking a fortune, tired of misfortune. I just wanted a portion, everything that I never had, though I needed my portion. Blowing like porcelain, haters cracking the porcelain. Getting broke, tired of being broke. How we acquire hope is to keep still as we go, just to keep us afloat. Might as deep as the road, brain is a lethal weapon. We want it to elope. When I speak up, I'm broke. Walk in the room with my aura feeling like heavy smoke. Feel like when the levy broke. Under my Louis fitted the semi-pump. Cause dirty cops are kicking, boy, yeah, the joke. The cost of living, higher profits and private prison. These little girls are selling body just to pay tuition. These little niggas selling niggas just to build condition. It's like this thing can never end, the prison and the mission. I wanna free the world, but I'm one man. A couple ones like me and me one plan. I wanna free the world, but I'm one man. A couple ones like me and one plan.
Islam. Islam, Islam, Islam. Welcome. Once again, y'all know how it goes. Islam, more, you there? I see you in the chat.
Well, I'm here, bro. Can you hear me clear?
Yes, sir. We can hear you clear. We can hear you loud and clear.
That's what's really good. Hey, I want to say just off the jump, I know we usually do this on the Blog Talk Radio, but I'm thankful to be on the Canaanland Moors YouTube page because we're all one family. But I already see in the chat, I just want to say, somebody posted in the chat, they saw a mantis outside the door of their house on the way in last night. I just want to say, Katir L, pay attention to the end. You're going to love this, bro. You definitely.
Let's go. It's been a while. It's been a while. It's been a while. And it's interesting. It's interesting to make the entrance, like, you know what I mean? The freaking fireworks and all that stuff, because we even tried to fix the Blog Talk issue.
Yeah.
Right? And the going on the Canaanland Moors just came up before the Blog Talk issue.
Yeah, it just word up, bro.
Yeah. I was taking that in.
Yo, but shout out to all of our MHHS
Islam
Eyes Wide Open Talk family. You know what I'm saying? We all one and the same. We
shout
here,
out.
you know, because of the technical difficulties, we had to be like this tonight. But you know what though, Cujo? You know, the creator is the best of all.
The best of planners. The best of planners. Never fails.
Yeah, bro, because I said, look, we missed last month, and I'm like, yo, we got to do 2 this month. We have to do 2. I really didn't even mind it being on any of our YouTube pages.
Right.
But I think it's a way to do it. We got one on Canaanland Moors for the record, and then next week, next Thursday, if all is well, you know, we'll be back again just because we missed you all last month.
Exactly.
Facts indeed. Back, and it feels so good to be back on the line with all the Moors, man. Like, it's just beautiful. I can't wait to unfold tonight and share some of my revelations.
Yeah, because you've been MIA, so we could start with that, because I know you have I know the floodgates are open tonight.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, they can't. They just definitely can't. So shit. I so many places I want to start. I don't even know where to start, bro.
Freestyle. Start anywhere. Start at 8. Start at 8.
Oh, facts, bro. So I said this Tuesday at the blog talk, usual Tuesday blog talk radio with our mothers, you know, Anna Eid and my mother, Roz Mariah Bay. And the first thing I said when I came back on after not being on for 4 weeks was, yo, and I clarified this. I said, when I say this, I don't mean, you know, a specific identity of a people. I mean a mentality. And I was saying, like, yo, it's hard, it's hell to get so-called niggas to realize that they're gods and what that entails, right? Mm. And what I meant by that is, you know, everything is within us, but most of the times we look without. I remember Anna E speaking on this, talking about, you know, people look outside of themselves and want everybody else to save them. And I came to the conclusion off of what I've been experiencing the past month. I mean, in the pits of fallen humanity. Like, yo, some people are just gone, right? Some of them we could resurrect, move the dry bones and, you know, help bring them back. But some people are just not coming back. And the fact that, you know, everything is within us. And when it comes to those who look outside of self for a resolution or a resolve or a happier life or whatever it may be, this is because the motive, whether they realize it being, you know, a 3D want or an actual thought, because a thought is an idea. You know, ideas are now just like a person, place, or thing. And the lower self, right? A lot of these things are based off of, when I say the 3D world, I mean, you know, what the lower self perceives tangibly, not what you perceive spiritually with your sense of sight. So I was saying that, say that when people look outside of themselves, Cujo, like, this is an aspect of the lower self. And the reason I say that is because as the lesson is laid out in the Circle 7 Holy Quran, it speaks about the selves, plural, you know, the higher self and the lower self. The higher self is the aspect of all the virtues and harmonies of life. The lower self knows it has to look outside of that mode of self to actually get a result, because it is the lower self and it passes away, but the higher self doesn't pass away. So the higher self tends to not look outside of itself because it is the harmonies of life. The lower self will have to, you know, look outside of that frequency, because it is not something that's perpetual. It is not something that's going to last forever. So the lower self tends to always look outside of itself because it knows itself that it can't last forever. And this is where you can distinguish those who are dealing in their higher self and those who are in their lower self, because you have a lot of people complaining that, you know, oh, this person didn't do this and that person didn't do that. And then you start to ask these people, like, well, what self of you was you dealing with, if you understand that degree? Because if you was in your lower self, of course you're going to be looking outside, because that is destined to pass away. And we have to be in the higher self so that we can, you know, do things for perpetuity, play forever, stay forever. And I don't mean that in the sense of the fact we know when we perfect in this plane that the body will drop and pass away. So we're here to make marks. And I'm saying this coming off of the back of last night being the last physical class at the MHHS.
Yes, Islam to that. Round of applause, yes.
Yeah, and so-called Harlem, which is Manhattan's island. You know what I'm saying? And it's been a 12-year cycle, meaning that you have to pay respect to the mothers who put in the work, because they have held up and have, ameliorated and have also, put on public display for those who were in their lower self, but also aware of their higher self subconsciously, to seek more information about themselves for over 12 years, meaning that for every sign of the zodiac, there's been a year of work put in a specific vortex location, and that has to be acknowledged for what it is. So some people don't have that dedication. There's some people who can't say they did 10 years of anything at all except breathe, So when you see somebody dedicated like that to a cause, to a specific locale and people, that's something that can't be overlooked either. Cool, Joe. I don't want to hog the floor, but I do have a lot to say, man.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I did want to interject something when you were talking about the higher self, lower self. Remember in Savior of Humanity, losing all sight on those things worldly and yielding absolutely to a cause higher than has ever been attained. Right? So being put on notice to go within. And with regard to the final class, I wanted to ask you something too. What, from your perspective, right?
Yeah.
How much have people gained over 12 years? Like, people talk BS about MHHS, the mothers and all that, right? But we're looking at 12 years. Like you said, a lot of people can't say that they've been that committed.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to be committed in something that is impactful on people's lives. What did people really get over those 12 years from the inside? You know what I mean? Like, what did they get?
Okay. Now, I'm glad you asked me that question. And again, I said shout out to Katsir L for mentioning seeing the mantis before we even started kicking it off. Facts indeed. But I want to say this. That same question you just asked me, I had to ask damn near everybody in the building last night that same question, and we didn't even talk about this. You know what I'm saying? We didn't. So I want to say definitely tune in to Mantis Views 29, because I can say my perspective, but I asked multiple people who've been there from day one the same question last night. You will be able to hear from them directly. I just want to preface that with that. But I'll tell you this, though, from me actually asking the people that. Now, from my perspective, I could give you my perspective, and I have no problem doing that. And I can let the people who I asked last night, their perspective will be on video as a classic exclusive, you know what I'm saying, behind the scenes, multiple hella interviews last night, going in, everybody. So, salute to everybody who's been there from day one. But I'll tell you like this, it was 9 minutes, because I really was talking to everybody last night, and I had a conversation with Red Pill, and I asked him the same question. I asked Mentors the same question, and I realized that it was more than what I thought it was, to be honest with you, because, there was people who met their life partners that met at the class. There's been failures in relationships where people have had to learn themselves more to be better people. There was people who was inspired just because of the fact that they've learned, and had reference points, not just lip service, but was given reference points to learn and study themselves and gain knowledge of themselves outside of the slave narrative. Y'all know how much, and this is no shade or nothing. Y'all know how much Red could talk. This brother couldn't really even say too much past 10 minutes, bro, because that's how deep it goes for those of us who there from day one, though. I'm not talking about, and those like to those who just started attending in maybe 2 years ago earlier. I'm talking about those who've actually been there and seen all of these so-called YouTube stars and scholars, etc., come through that class to get degrees. You know what I'm saying? So even today, when I look at the digital so-called conscious community, just strictly based off digital way, I'm like, some things I see that's not agreed with, but most of these people have stepped through that venue of which my mother laid out. She explained the story last night. You know what I'm saying? She did go through it. And of course, it's a lot to be recapped. And it's hard to do that within a couple of hours because we're talking about 12 years. There's been people that have been there from day one, and those 12 years made them the 12 years of free men opposed to 12 years of slave. You know what I'm saying? And throughout the journey of coming to those classes every Wednesday, you know what I'm saying? Or for most of the time, this is what helped them, you know what I mean, become free in their minds, in their spirits, and be able to deliver messages. So I say that to say that, the class, honestly, it can't even be circumscribed to 3 hours, bro. But I'll say this, I'll try to make a synopsis. I've seen every aspect myself, you know what I'm saying? There was years over the past 12 years where I was working for the Pilgrims and I couldn't make it every Wednesday because I was on the Pilgrim schedule. And then on the other side, I got shown what it means to put in work for yourself and your people and to have support in doing that. So, I've learned so much basically from my perspective, first and foremost, before I speak outside of self. There's people who've been coming to that class that actually seen me transition from my young adult years, I'm talking now through teenage years, like late teens and all of my 20s, bro. Now I'm 31 right now. There's people who can say they seen me unfold into a young man. Right. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. Ready for the... So this is what, some of these intangible things, some of these things that leave their marks on the spirit, on your spirit. You can't just be like, oh, nah, that don't mean nothing. That means a lot, bro. Because it's certain people that have maintained a connection to myself and family, and likewise my family to them, that, it goes beyond the realms of just being a temporary 3D satisfactory type of thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's old heads who could tell me straight up, I seen your young men, your young adulthood into your young manhood unfold, period. Now, for me, for anybody to be able to say that, from my perspective, is some deep thing. I don't know how to even, give reverence or veneration to that, but to me, it's deep, you know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, I'm like, yo, I've also seen people who went through trials and tribulations, including myself. You know what I'm saying? I'll tell you like this. I had a situation, people can say what they want, but, I had a situation where a policy enforcer tried to make a null and void accusation on us on some real, on me specifically, on some real, like, Negro law type stuff, and these was our own people in those blue suits, etc. And, when they had kidnapped me, Moors who had a camaraderie just from coming to that class in real life, knowing that we're studying law, knowing that we're studying history, and then how the past, present, and future are one. That's why history is important in the aspect, you know, you could change and manipulate the future, if you will, based off of what you do in the present, but it's all based off of something that went right or wrong in the past, according to your perception. So, you know, when you have the ability to realize that, like, oh, I understand why we are Moors and why these Europeans, pilgrims, or their companies, corporations, etc., don't have jurisdiction over ours. I've seen a sense of, you know, courage and pride and knowledge and wisdom restored back certain people directly of who I could see. It ain't like these was invisible. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally seen that growth and be like, damn, and then they went on to do whatever, good, bad, or indifferent, but the fact that I could say, yo, I'm not crazy. There's people out in the world who know that this is right and exact because we've been shown it irrefutable proof. Whether it be from, you know, that's one of the things I asked, you know, what was it that you could walk away with this class for life? And I asked them, I was like, yo, was it like, you know, the fact you found out you're not Negro, black, or colored? You know what I'm saying? Was it the fact that, you know, you found out about the Constitution? Like, what was it? And, you know, some of the responses were the most genius. I wouldn't even have seen that answer coming. And I've learned something even at the end, because it's not the end of teaching or, you know, events and you know, congregating. It's just a new cycle. And that's what I explained. If we was to measure this up based off of a quarter century, we hit the 12-year mark, which is basically like halftime. You know what I'm saying? So another 12 years from now, inshallah, like, we could wrap up, we could analyze a 25-year span of, you know what I mean, being involved with raising the consciousness. So to me, I'm just like, 12 years, that's what's up, but it's just halftime. We ain't done. Yep. It's halftime. It's just time to change. It's time to turn up. 2 more quarters and we got to turn up, and that's what we're going to do. So that being the case, it's like, you know, I just want to let this footage speak for itself, and I will try to get that out as soon as possible when it comes to that question. But I've seen lives saved. I've seen Moors wake up on levels that you wouldn't even think of was possible. You know what I mean? And it happened. Moors who know so-called celebrities who utilize this information to beat cases on tour, everything. So for me, it's like, yo, you know what I'm saying? My mother is, I don't even know if a legend is the right word to describe it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and on one hand, you'd be like, yo, this was written in the stars. This was God ordained. But, you know, some Negroes can't relate. But on the other hand, you'd be like, yo, I don't even know if legend is the right word to define this, because we're responsible as a collective. Everybody who came through that venue basically is responsible today, among others, you know what I'm saying? Among others, for uplifting the consciousness of millions of people, bro. Hundreds of thousands to millions of people. So I'm almost speechless about that. I'm not self as well. Like, I'm almost speechless about that, because I just feel like it's halftime, and you know, when we do the 25-year recap, etc., we'll be able to say, like, yo, look, this is where we came from to this. You understand? And not that it's gonna have to take that long, but it's just halftime. And that's how I see it. No, it's not a game, bro. So yeah. I say that, you know, for the most part, you know, in the so-called conscious YouTube community, some of these people, I don't know who they are, where they came from, and then some of them, it's like, oh yeah, I remember these people, and they came through different halls of learning and went out and stepped out, and I don't know what happened, like how how did you lose common sense? Because this information was always based off common sense.
Yes.
Like there was time where, you know, somebody could debunk the logic of, oh, you're not black. You know what I'm saying? Or you're not Negro, you're not colored. That you are Moors. You know what I'm saying? Especially after you looked up Moor and then you look up Blackamoor and all of these things. It's just amazing. But I say, yeah, it's I don't know. It's like you got the ups and downs of certain time periods throughout 12 years, and it shows you that, you know, life is motion. Life is about waves. You know what I'm talking about? Ups and downs and things like that. But at the same time, it's a consistency with this process. So I don't know. I just seen amazing presentations, amazing works, and it all helped from my attendance there. You know what I mean? And even other people's attendance there consistently. You know, I had some testimonies I didn't put out, and honestly, not that I was shook or anything of that nature, but even with Mantis Views 29 as a frequency to get this information out. I have certain classics where I'm like, well, I could put this out, and I wanted to put them out as of like last year and before, and I was just like, well, hold on, you know, these so-called people, you know, was putting out different profiles about Moors. They were generalizing, you know what I mean? And I mean that last year they came out with the whole BIE thing, or so-called black identity extremists. And we know we're not black, but it was disrespectful enough to include Moors in that profile. You know what I'm saying? And try to target Moors. And I'm like, hold on, let me walk. You know, there's something happening in the shadows, whether it be valid or invalid. I'm like, it's something in the shadows right now. And, you know, that being the case, sometimes you have to preserve certain classics or certain, you know, information for the right time, because we already know at this time that they wasn't even sure about who said what and who put out that so-called black identity extremism thing, which was unconstitutional. And I know you've addressed that before, but I say that to say that, you know, I have memories for days about Moors who have been uplifted in their lives, ameliorated from knowing the law, knowing divine law, knowing the Constitution, knowing about themselves, knowing about the history of Moors and what that means to them and on this very day. You know what I mean? And like I said, I just rather put that footage out so most of the people can speak for themselves, bro.
Sure. Yeah, that's peace.
Indeed. But yo, I wanted to say this too. It's been a minute since I've been on, and I wanted to share this with you all because another more acknowledgement to Brother Kashan and his counterpart, you know, Ayesha. But yo, the brother had asked me a couple weeks ago to go with him to an estate sale. And this was the first estate sale I ever been to in my life, bro. Word up, I've never been to one before. And this was the first one I went to. And we walk in the house or whatnot. And, you know, the feel, the vibration is just good because it's out there on land, etc. and all of this. Now, if I gave a land description, it would get kind of ill because we was like, you know, when you out there on the land, like it's certain places where streets are miles apart. Like you be riding for like a mile, half mile before you get to the next street once you make a turn onto one street in some places. So like, this is a point I wanted to make. You gotta understand the digital world versus the real world. You know, it really can't compete because like you take something like, let's say GPS, right? You put in a GPS and you're going out into the middle of West Bubble Hump. You don't even know, you know what I'm saying? you put the GPS on, and you be on one street, and hold on. Before, I don't know, I was just receiving a text. I love y'all, but I really can't read that right now because I got to do that. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At the same time, you could be in the middle or somewhere in the middle of a lot of land, and you're on one street that's like a mile away from, or half a mile away from another street. So you pull up, the GPS will give you directions to a specific street, but you're really not at your location. You're at the back end of the property line because there's certain land that goes far, that back, like goes back far. Like you see a house, but the backyard is just sick and it goes back miles and miles. So you could be on the other side of the street or the front entrance that you want to be to, but the GPS will tell you like, oh, you've arrived, because the property line is like, oh, this is it. But it's actually, you know, another half a mile on the other side of the street, if you could picture what I'm saying. So it's nothing but a bunch of land, and, you know, you have one house facing east, the front door is facing east, and then, you know, between a half a mile gap, you have another house whose front door is facing west. But you pull up to that front door who's facing west, from a bird's eye view, you really want to be at the house that's on the right, facing east, which is a half mile apart. So I say that to say that that was one of the first revelations I had, or reminders I had, about the technical or the digital world never competing with the real world, because you always must know yourself and where you're at. And why certain tools that was given to us back in the day, like compasses, you know what I'm saying? Fish knives that had compasses in them, so that you can always find your way in direction naturally based off of water and magnetism. So, you know, there's certain things, there's reminders in life, but nonetheless, so we get to this estate sale, and what I realized is that, you know, when our people pass away, you know, and other people as well, what happens is the probate court will step in and then be like, oh, well, you know, the family has no interest in any of these, you know, leftover belongings that were his or her personal items. So that being the case, you know what I mean? They'll be like, well, you know, we know the land and the yard and the house and everything has to be divided up between the heirs, corporate heirs, if I shall say, in a certain extent or perspective, when it comes to their perspective of, oh, well, the only heirs of this mother and father are the direct children of uterine descent. You know what I mean? So in that perspective, they deal with the probate to attack the descendants from the same uterine. And that's where they come up with, okay, so you get this percentage, the other one gets that percentage, the other child gets that percentage, and whatever. But before they do all of that, you know, if nobody claims the leftover property, what happens is they'll sell it. The Europeans will take over, they'll send in the team, and they'll sell the property of the deceased. And they sell it low, like they're cheap. And this was my first experience I'm speaking of, but I've heard of this happening before as well. Like just selling things very low, and whatever doesn't get sold, because they know everything won't sell, they'll just turn around and sell it on eBay for the high price. They'll buy it themselves and then sell it on eBay. And this is how they also contribute to us cheating estates. But this particular estate sale, this was definitely a Moorish woman. They said she was a teacher. Everything in the house was basically Moorish. You know what I mean? I do have pictures. It was a lot of Moorish information in there, and I definitely want to quote from a couple of things, you know what I mean, that I was able to obtain from that particular experience from the literature, because Noble Drew Ali said, in order to change the people, you must change the literature. So we take these jewels and these gifts very serious when we're able to obtain literature. So, like I said, I went with a brother, and he was like, "Yo, oh, hold up, I'm gonna yield the floor over to you real quick,
All right.
yo. My fault.
No worries. So, with regard to the estate sales, there's been Moors in this jurisdiction that have gone to some, and yeah, it's the same situations where it's either the family of the deceased or the corporate body snatchers that are claiming somebody else's stuff, and they sell whatever they sell. And the true perspective is like what Moors did: get those things and put our energy on them. Because you're gonna go to some of these quote unquote estate sales, and yeah, even though they're doing their whatever practices through their lawyers and other officers at a court, the things that we could retrieve as far as information, just like with Brother Mario's live last week or whatever about the European being a real good record keeper. And again, going back to Drew Ali, that you're going to keep the European here long enough so that we can get certain things. We can reconnect to certain information. And again, look at it from the spiritual perspective. Always that something led you, whatever it is that you get from wherever it is that you decide to go, estate sale, some event, you heard about some Tibetan store, you heard about whatever, and you retrieve something from there that is, quote unquote, obviously Moorish. Know that ancestors led you there to retrieve these things. What you do with it after is whatever you do. It might be, again, like we were speaking about from before, it might be for your upliftment. Whatever it is that you get.
Yes, absolutely, bro. Absolutely. And that's how divine law works. So, one of the things that was like major is, it was some different jewels in there, certainly different jewels in there. And one of them was I was in the shed area with the brother Kershawn, and he was looking at books, but it was super hot in the shed where they were selling things, which it was obvious that they were definitely creators and studiers. Now, mind you, this is a Moorish teacher, and it's funny, we didn't know, because, and this is a really true fact, right? I got to put this in perspective. This is a teacher, and anybody who's serious about history, you can't be studying history and not know about Moors or not have information pertaining to Moors.
Hold on. Say that again. Say that again, because people don't really digest what a real scholar is. Right? So we already have the late great Dr. Ben as an example. He got his Moorish doctorate. We got Jose Pimenta Bay, who he's a Bay that's PhD. So You know what I mean? Speak,
Mhm.
yeah. Say that one more time.
Yo, there's no way you can go into history. Like, you could give your perspective on whatever you want, but you can't be serious about history and be ignorant of Moors. There's no possible way if you're serious about history. And when I say that, I mean you will also be studying. You wouldn't just be studying material from the 60s. You will be going back into the early 1900s to get certain books. You will go back into the 1800s to check out those books from those years and see how frequently Moors was mentioned as a necessity. There's no possible way on this planet that you can say you're a true scholar and don't know anything about Moors except for what they told you on the news, trying to paint a certain image, or what they're telling you with the yellow journalists, trying to paint a certain image. It's crazy. I was in the spot and I had footage. I was showing some Moors at the class last night. This as well. When I was at the estate sale, based off of the brother inviting me to go. You know what I'm saying? In the shed, there was a book, and it was multiple books, but this one was called the Alhambra, and it was hardcover. You know what I'm saying? And a place like that, you can't literally breeze through every book and be like, oh, let me read some of this to see if I want it. You got to say, okay, I see the topic. I like the price. This is coming with me. And that's basically what I was at. So where I was at with it, and I seen a book called the Alhambra, and thank God, praise due to Allah that I was able to read the material of Noble Drew Ali to give us all the message to America. You know what I mean? What type of man would have a message to America? Somebody that's concerned with the general public. So, you know what I mean? For him to have a message to America and to be able to read that and let that hit you in the chest, because, when he's talking about the Mohammedans and, he was hoping that the Mohammedan faith being, satisfactory to us all of these. And then you start asking, well, who was the Mohammedans? You know what I mean? And then you see that in history, all of these things are relative. Mohammedans, Muslims, Muslimen, Moors, from a historical context. They're talking about the same people. They're talking about the same people from a historical context. So, to be able to be in tune with that for a Moor, to a prophet, to be able to tell you that your ancestors built those majestic buildings and things like that of the Alhambra. He's saying these things, and I see a book called the Alhambra, being a Moor, in fact, indeed, in action. That I already know that's my history. You feel what I'm saying? So I seen the book the Alhambra, and I just that's coming with me. And it's funny. I don't know, for those who've seen that cartoon, I think you can find it on YouTube by typing in Moor in the cartoon. It's like an old cartoon, and it's like this European who gets his donkey taken, and he has a Moor as a genie or a genius.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, that's an old cartoon, but I'm telling you, people might think it's allegory, but it's real, because that same story is in this book called the Alhambra that we picked up at the estate sale. Facts and Deed, detail everything from the burning taper. Right, the taper is a candle, basically. That's what a taper is. So, when they was talking about the burning taper and the donkey and everything about the donkey and the treasures being hidden, but you gotta burn the candle to unbury the treasure at midnight, or it's not going to work, the spell or the incantation.
You're seeing the screen right now? This is the one you're talking about?
Say that again?
I'm showing the video right now of the cartoon.
Oh.
That's the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Are you watching it?
Yeah, no, I'm not in front of the screen right now.
All right.
4 minutes.
All right, no worries.
Yeah, but
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, keep that on top though, because we definitely gonna come back and revisit that. Okay. But I'm sure you did pull up the right one. Yeah, I know you did. I know you did, even though I didn't look at it. But yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's like it's a lot of like they have a lot of Russian names in the beginning with the credits, right?
Right.
And yeah. And you know, everything about that cartoon came straight out of or is a true story because it's in this book. I'm like, yo, hold on. It's not just that. There's a lot of things in this book. I haven't read the whole thing, but it was in the cover. It doesn't say anything about a copyright. It doesn't say anything about what year it was published. But somebody gifted it to somebody on their birthday in the year 1901. So, mind you, this book has been around for over 100 years. The pages have gold leaf at the top. So this is a jewel, like it really is gold leaf. And they was letting it go for like 20, it was no more than 20 notes, bro. So I picked that up and I've been reading that. And later on I'm gonna get into some of that. I would right now, but I had a situation occur, so I'm gonna get right back to it. But that was one jewel, and another one was they had this book set, right? Because remind you, this was my first estate SL in life, and I said before, all I really know what to talk on is about, you know, my life experiences at this particular point in life. So that's what we're gonna do, and it was a series of books as well called the NHL, and the NHL stood for Negro Heritage Library, right? Not the hockey league. You know what I'm saying? that's what it. Now I know we're not Negro blacks and colors, but I'm telling you, it was like anywhere from like 12 to maybe 18 books for like 30 notes, big joints. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get this just because. And I opened it up, started reading. I'm like, this is coming with us for 30 notes. I'm sure there's some history to be refined in there. You feel me? Like, it has to be, even if they're referring to us as Negroes, only the wise possess the power of discernment. So, you know, a wise man wouldn't be fooled by that because the so-called devil can't fool a Muslim in these days anymore. You understand? So I'm like, I'll get that and refine it for the understanding and understanding that needs to be had. So we got that set. And it's not just for me. I'm like, when we get the next situation right, this is intended to be a part of a Moorish library for a circle that will stay close. You understand? Where anybody can pull it off the shelf and read it. You understand? Because we have, right, Noble Drew Ali did say in order to change the people, you have to change the literature. So therefore, that means that there's a level of refinement that has to happen. Because the literature in those days was a lot of misrepresentation, slander, all of these things. So he's like, yeah, if you're going to change people, you got to change that because they printing the craziest stuff about us. And that's the biggest weapon we have in our hand is a response to all of these avalanches of lies. So, you know, that's a task for the few who are, or the many who may be, you know, in full life, eyes wide open for real. Like, you know what I'm saying? They're not playing with it. They're not slacking. These are the ones who are going to be called to task to do this level of refinement, to distinguish the truth from the falsehood, because, like Noble Drew Ali said, it's strangely mixed. It's strangely mixed. So if you are dealing with, you know, something that says, you know, Negro black color, you being a Moor and already having preliminary instructions from Noble Drew Ali, you shouldn't be being deceived by anything. So you know you're not a Negro, black, and colored. You don't stop there. You're studying everything. It's like, what to study, everything. So once you refine your mind, you can refine everything and then define yourself, refine yourself. And this is where we find ourselves at today. Now, before I quote from some of this literature, I want to say also at the state sale, quote unquote, after we collected the books, and I want to give a big acknowledgement, because I know the brother, if he's not listening, he probably will listen to the brother Kashan, because like I said, he invited me to my first so-called estate sale. And after we get all of this literature, after we get all of these jewels that, I mean, we got multiple sets, pictures, artwork, everything. We come back around full cipher, and he's like, yo, so you telling me you really not going to get this mantis? I'm like, what mantis? Like, I don't see no mantis. Bro, they had a copper table in there. You know what I'm saying? Copper table, bass piece on it. Made of all copper, including the mantis. You can't buy this anywhere. Like, you know what I'm saying? Now, y'all who know me know that that was meant for me. Like, because that's my shit. You heard what I just said? You feel me? The mantis frequency. Now, mind you, the day before that, no, actually, the Sunday before that particular Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, I don't remember. We had came back from a so-called Labor Day celebration or birthday. It was that weekend. You feel me? It was a celebration. And when we came back to where we were staying at temporarily, there was a mantis right outside. I'm sitting outside and, you know, I was just zoning. And the European lady, big European lady, was like, oh my God, a praying mantis. I said, where? I got it recorded and all of that, bro. You know what I'm talking about? So when you tap into certain frequencies in life,
yep,
are manifesting around you.
Yeah.
And you can't even deny this shit no more. You be like, yo, everything I do in life is about this. Not even if I want to. This is just what it is. You know what I'm saying? So things start manifesting in different aspects.
Yeah.
And you just be like, yo, you know what I mean? These are divine signs. So when the brother Kasir L in the chat was mentioning the fact that he saw a mantis last night, I'm like, yo, I had two sorts of revelations from the mantis in the same week. Like one literally in the flesh, and then the other one, you know what I'm saying, through artwork, which you already know Noble Ali was going in about how this is about the art sciences and things like that.
Yeah.
The study of science of happiness is the study of his life. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So when you see different motifs and emblems and different deities or divinities, manifested here in the 3D realm, you have to understand what that means to you, because I know some people who be like, you know, oh, well, you know, so-called ladybugs are good luck. You know what I'm saying? So-called whatever else means good luck. If you dream about this, but for me, when you see it in real life, it's just like, okay.
Hold on a second. Okay, so when you're talking about the frequencies, what I was going to talk about was last week. I was walking home, and I was studying at the time animal totems and the omens with different animals or whatever. And then I bumped into a thing about insect omens. So earlier that day, I was reading about the ladybug and the symbolism behind a ladybug. While I was walking home, and I'm walking, I looked at my hand and a ladybug was on my forearm.
There you go.
Right? And then again, with the whole thing with the frequencies, we didn't talk about, we're going to talk about this. And then you reach into the ethers and you're pulling out Ladybug right when my next interjection was going to be about Ladybug.
Thanks, bro. That's just how it goes.
That's how it goes. Frequency. Vibrating on the right frequency so you can see the messages when they're presented to you.
Yes, indeed, bro. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as they say, and as the axiom or maxim goes, the great divine speaks in signs. So I'm catching all of these signs, and I'm like, damn, you know, I had picked up a lot of literature. Once again, you know, feeling like I'll be a student for the rest of my life, bro. Like for the rest of my life. So, you know, it's just like, I'm happy about that. I already know every stage in life is a chapter. You know what I mean? And that's basically what it is, man. So when we talk about the law of nature, natural stuff be happening to us, but we can't connect. And also, I don't want to go too far out, but I do want to say this before I bring it back to the earth plane. As far as the concept of the message, as far as I had a revelation personally to myself about astrology, and I'm like, you know, how do you explain this to people? How do people make it understand? How's it understood, you know, just based off of common sense? And I was thinking like, all right, well, we're all so-called humans, right? So-called humans. And we're born in different seasons throughout the years. It's like every so-called plant or tree is a so-called tree, but they're different and they last and they endure based off of what type of tree they are and, you know, what season. Some trees are evergreen. There is no season where they're out of season. You understand? So it's like, you know, this is what your evergreens are about. There is no, you know, plants that, you know, are basically built to manifest in spring that will manifest in the wintertime in the dead of snow. Some plants can, some plants can't. And I see astrology basically like the same way. Like, you know, we're all human beings, but we're born in different seasons, meaning that we bear different attributes, but we all share a common experience called life. You understand? And through that experience, you know, you have to understand that it's the science of the universe that guides you through that. And if you have no respect for that, then, you know, life more than likely sometimes will be so carnal, meaning that you'll be carnal man, you know what I mean? Or on the frequency of a carnal man instead of the spirit man, which the spirit man can manifest anything on the carnal level. But you have to know that difference. And without that being the case, you know, this is how we see a bunch of zombies walking around as living dead. You know what I'm saying? When we talk about fallen humanity, bro, did you understand how many attributes of
fallen
humanity?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
Humanity. This shit is deep.
Deep.
It is deep. Bro.
Deep.
Oh, also, share this with you. I didn't post this up, but I got it recorded, right?
Yeah.
So I'm back in my hometown. And I should have known better. I should have did the Uber instead of the cab. But I call a cab, and I want to read something from you real quick, because this is about to all tie in. So I call a so-called cab, right? Just catching y'all up with some real life situations that, you know, woke me up to another degree. And so I call a cab opposed to an Uber, etc. And I get that the cab comes, and I'm like, okay, well, look, I want to change my destination to one block over. And they started acting real funny on me. Now, mind you, my cab driver is one of our quote-unquote brothers from Africa. You understand? So, but he's a cab driver. And, you know, he started acting funny on me like, oh, well, you know, I got to pick up my daughter and all of this. Now, I'm just saying, my original spot was 1 block over from where I asked to be dropped off at. He didn't drop me off at either of these places, bro. None of them. None. Zero. Like the original place I called to go or the one that I wanted to go. Right? So I'm like, all right, you bugging. You know what I mean? I turn on the camera. I'm like, I'm getting the rest of this on the lens. It's got to go on the lens. Because I just know it's about to get ill. Like, I just know it is. You didn't drop me off at either one of my destinations. But you want to keep driving with me in your conveyance. So I'm like, yo, this feels like a temporary kidnap. Long story short, he tried to take me to the police. Yeah, he tried to drop me off on a whole nother boulevard. And I'm like, yo, I ain't dropped off here. I don't owe you shit. I don't care what you say. I'm not paying you nothing. You didn't drop me off where I called you to come to or where I asked you to go to. I'm not paying nothing. So he tries to take me to the police station. I'm like, what? Now I feel like the cab is the goddamn police car. I'm in the back and shit.
What the fuck?
So on the way there, you know what I'm saying? It was some police team kidnapping another brother, right? And this is what these program policy enforcement. It's kidnapping another brother, and while they was kidnapping him, the cab driver pulls up to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this guy said he wasn't gonna pay me. I'm not." You gotta see some of this for yourself because it's just crazy, like his reaction and everything. The policy enforcer, you know, long story short, the policy enforcer tried to ask me for ID because he got to report the incident. I said, I'm not showing you shit. The reason why is because I called a cab and I didn't call a cab to be telling my name to police officers. I don't want to tell you what my name is. He's like, oh, well, you got to document it. I mean, he's like, well, I have to document it. I said, okay, document it as anonymous. Do that, because I don't want to give you money. I didn't pay for this experience, and I'm not participating. You heard, this shit is some bullshit. You know, I ain't got nothing against y'all, but I didn't call him to have y'all be a part of my day. So I'm not doing anything that you feel like you want to do. And word is bond. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have to show no ID, no none of that. He just was like, yeah, we took care of it. Have a good day. I'm like, yeah, you know, that's how that's supposed to go. You don't have to identify yourself just because they ain't get into inquisition mode. But I want to say that to say, I said that to say this, right? Because the brother came from so-called Africa, and I was talking about the Negro Heritage Library book that I picked up at the estate sale, volume 1, right? So volume 1, because these people will work so hard with who people generally perceive as the so-called oppressors, right? This is what it says, and I want you to keep this in mind and apply this. You feel me? Because again, it's been said, the maxim is all skin folk into kinfolk. So from the New World Adventure, it's called the Negro Heritage Library, or the NHL, and page 18, it goes into the quote-unquote New World Adventure. For those who don't know, the Europeans or the Pilgrims or the pale skin nations of Europe, they refer to the land that we know as America, North, South, and Central, as the New World. And the reason why the pale skin nations of Europe refer to it as that is because they're not indigenous here. Mm-hmm. So it was new to them, but it was very ancient to us. Copper complexion, melanated, brown skin Moors. You know what I mean? And to understand that, yeah, there are some of our own people, even here and outside of here, who has an agenda against us to a certain degree. You know, I think this will clarify that. Now, again, I said that this book and this message needs some refinement. You know what I mean? But this is what it says. Page 18. There was never a time in the Europeans' exploration and exploitation of the quote-unquote new world when they were without the services of some quote-unquote black Europeans. Claim that Pedro Alonso Nino of Columbus crew was a quote-unquote Negro has never been disproved, and if he was indeed a quote-unquote Negro, he performed more than yeoman service for the Admiral of the Ocean Sea. In 1501, Spain lifted her ban on the taking of quote-unquote Negroes to the New World. So I say that to say that, you know, don't be fooled when some of these people try to convince you that your open enemy, your sworn enemy or adversary, shall I say, because enemy is a strong word, but your open adversary, you know what I'm saying, didn't or hasn't done things to, you know, suppress you, even though they look like you know, they, spirit man, are not like you, because like I started off with, you know, there's certain people in their lower self, they're not on the higher self frequency like you. You know what I mean? And when you're on the higher self frequency, this is where you can get, you know, your integrity. Like your integrity comes from that frequency. But if you're on your lower self frequency, it is no union between somebody with, you know, a frequency of a higher self, and everything you do is in lower self, 3D base. You're not understanding this goes from 1 to 7 to even 9D. I don't know, but I'm just saying that this is more than what you see. So there never was a time when man was not. And I say that to say that in these times, those same energies exist, bro. So like they said in that book, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. There never was a time in the Europeans' exploration that, or Columbus's exploration, that they was without some so-called black servants, you know what I mean? Or black, excuse me, hold on, let me requote that. That they were in service of some black Europeans, excuse me. That's what it is. So, you know, I know we're not Negro, black, and color, but remind you, this refinement is coming from a perspective of what was going on and what people had to say in the 60s when a lot of different things had already had taken effect. You know, we're talking post-1774 when they started casting that spell of Negro, black, and color on the Asiatics of North America who were of Moorish descent, because they honor not the principles of their mothers and fathers, and straight after the gods of Europe of whom they knew nothing. And this is where you get the fall of the Moors, and you niggas who don't know what your nationality is today can't understand the difference, because you're spiritually dead. Similar to mortus. So don't talk crazy about Moors, you know what I mean, who are exercising their birthright. Can't do it, you know what I mean? You're in the status of a slave. There wasn't no slave on the plantation more disrespectful or more ungrateful for a Django than somebody who was close to the Candies, which would be your Stevens, who look like you, but they ain't for you. You know what I'm saying? So my fault. I know I could chew the floor the rest of the night, but I just wanted to say that, you know, and the fact that that's what I noticed at the estate sale. Now, this is the other thing I wanted to say about the estate sale, because not only did I see the mantis in real life, I seen it through the art form, and then I seen it through, you know, just what was being attracted to me at the so-called estate sale. You know what I mean? Whereas this whole book about Moors, I'm seeing words I've never seen before. I'm hearing about stories of Moors I've never heard before. And like I said, this is 1901. So I might get into some highlights from this book a little later, but But right now, I don't want to just go ahead and shoot a whole floor. I use
hey, through the floor, yo. We got 2 this month.
Yeah, we definitely
get
do.
it out, yo. Get it out. Do your thing. Get it out.
Yeah, bro. So I say that too. I have to say this. Hold on, give me 1 sec.
Yeah. We got
I had to
2.
spit my teeth. You know what I'm talking about? But I say that to say I've seen, you know what I mean, within the last couple of weeks, some of the aspects of fallen humanity that I haven't seen in a very long time. And I mean, I've seen it, I just haven't paid attention like I am now. And I would say this, you know, our brothers and sisters need upliftment. You know what I'm saying? And I know Noble Drew Ali was holding the woman up because she was in a so horrific state. You know what I mean? Meaning a deep sleep, right? But yo, it's some other shit going on to where these dudes is putting the fear in our women because they're pimping them. And some of these women they isolate themselves because they fear, the aspect of, well, this dude is going to say this and I got to hear that. And, you know, he might put his hands on me. He might throw a bottle at me. He might follow, these dudes, some of our brothers really need to check that shit and understand the law of detachment, because I'm telling you from what I've seen, you know what I'm saying? I've seen this as of recent, you know what I mean? Brothers is pulling up on sisters and, you know, talking about you better be working and all of this shit. And I'm like, yo, y'all are still doing this shit? This shit is just crazy leeching. And what I realized is that one of the main lessons we have to learn in this life is attachment and detachment. And detachment, because I say detachment, I was speaking to my mother about this the night before, and this is just where my frequency is at right now. I'm like, yo, well, in life we have to learn of certain things we have to let go, and certain things we have to hold on to. You know, a lot of things we have to hold on to is actually intangible. It ain't even something you could touch, what you're supposed to be holding on to. But then there's other things that are tangible you can't let go of either, right? We can't let go of. But I say that to say that when you come into this world, the first lesson that is actually, you know, given to the mother is creation and detachment. Because, you know, and this is something that the child is marked with having to experience his whole life as well, because the first thing that happens when the child is born is the lesson of detachment. You have to detach from your mother's umbilical cord. So the first thing that happens in life is detachment. But people like to hold on to things past, you know, its expiration date. So it's like, you know, people attach to things, but yo, that child or that creation or that project or whatever it is you was working on, it was already born. Let it go. You know what I'm saying? Or that relationship, that hope, that wish, whatever it was, you know, if you know, a certain mathematical time frame has passed, not to say it will never happen, but you have to detach to continue on your path and let the creation unfold just like you was allowed to unfold from, you know, the inception to the so-called birth, which is where we get birthrights from. So, you know, until we can learn that, and those are Buddhist degrees. Those are actually natural degrees, honestly. We can't even attribute that in the aspect of how I just pointed it out, that look, you know, from birth there's detachment. Detachment from birth. You can't stay attached to the umbilical cord forever. There's nothing that you can stay attached to forever except who you are, yourself, your ancestry, your progenitors, your ascendants, your descendants. You have to leave your spiritual mark and character for it to outlive you. So even with that being said, it has to be a detachment in your 3D self to actually make it make sense for anybody else in this 3D world. Because if not, you're just going to be, carnal. 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 The carnal nature of man. So I don't know, more. That's my piece. I think that, sometimes we have to really exercise these philosophies that was highlighted for us in certain philosophies. Because I'm not saying, my thing is this. I respect what you do, being more as far as your contributions, the More Science Temple of America. You know what I'm saying? I respect Noble Drew Ali. I don't, some of these people who are saying or downplaying other Moors because they feel they're holier than thou. My thing is this: I rock with what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said.
Right.
What's tangible to be pointed out. You know what I'm saying? And I can understand a Moorish spirit or attribute opposed to a European who is COINTELPRO, etc., fronting for the public like they're genuine Moors, and they're really not.
Mm-hmm.
So this aspect go on too within the 12 years. There has always been those who were against, with what ties with my mother, and I'm speaking from a recap of 12 years, not just yesterday, not just the past. I'm not speaking of the influx of up and down, speaking from a general perspective of 12 years. As far back as I can remember, bro, there's always been haters of my mom and Taj, bro.
Yeah.
When it comes to always. It never has. So for me, personally, I'm like, when I hear this crazy shit, I'm like, but these niggas been talking like that for years. You know what I'm saying? Like, this shit ain't nothing new. We know that they've been sold out the mission of what Prophet Noble Drew Ali was about, what CM Bay was about, how he was waking those up who thought they was Negroes, blacks, and colors. Waking their ass like an alarm clock on steroids. You understand? To talk to these people. So, you know what I'm saying? When I seen that in this age, I'm like, oh, that same shit still exists. It still exists. But what the attestation is for me is that the fact that it existed back then, and I've seen how many people still are waking up now based off of it, being applied, the knowledge being shared even in this day. I'm like, okay, so this same contemporary negative spirits from back then that existed, they still exist today, but just like they ain't stopped nothing really back then from progressing for the future generations, they're not stopping shit now. They just talking shit. So that's why I be looking at some of them like, I don't give a fuck what you say. And the reason why I don't is because you can't stop truth. You just can't. And
bottom line. Bottom line. Yeah.
Bottom line. So no matter how much slandering and lip flappering you want to do about people who've been putting in work while you niggas was still niggas mentally, and now you still niggas because you think you woke up and still don't know shit, or blatantly agents. You know what I mean? Certain opinions don't hold validity as far as I'm concerned. The general public, when they believe the slander that they hear about noble Moors, honorable Moors, and let me specifically say my mother everyday publications. My thing is this: when people believe that shit, that's what get me like, yo, y'all are crazy, because I've seen the tactics that we call the counterintelligence operatives do. And I'm talking about those who have handcuffs and badges and all of that. Like, let's say, okay, all right, I caught my first situation when I was 14. like maybe about like anywhere between like 5 to 6 years before I really started to be, you know, really, really like, oh shit, this information is going to change and save my life. Not because I heard it, because I take it serious and I'm inquiring and I can see that that's what this information is about to do. Life is never going to be the same. I was sitting in Queen Vow classes at 11 years old. You know what I'm saying? And back then it was like, you know, okay, I'm here because my mom is here, but I was also being woke the fuck up subconsciously. And then shit started showing up in real life. And what I'm saying is that throughout life, you start to see like, oh, hold up. You know, at different stages, you can look back just like you'd be like, well, I planted a baby flower and now it's so big. You know what I mean? I never imagined it would get to this size. That's because you took care of it. That's because you understood that if you take care of it and you take it serious, it will give you back something to reward your caretaking or your knowledge base or your assiduity or your attentiveness. You know what I'm saying? And that's basically what I've seen manifest. So I'm like, yo, you know, when I hear, again, people who are downplaying that, I just be like, yo, man, it's nothing you can really say to me because I know you niggas is not going to last. You're just not. And don't talk to me about you want any type of Moorish village, anything, because you niggas will not ever own anything. Excuse me, and I'm not referring to Moors as niggas. Excuse me, that's not what I'm doing. But you won't own anything and you can't own anything until you own your name. You know what I mean? And not just your YouTube name. Like, you know, without owning your name, you can't own anything else. You ain't even your proper person. You know what I'm talking about? Owning nothing. Because you're not in your own proper person. So when you talk about your own proper person, right? The key word is your own. What the fuck? If you don't own your own proper person, don't talk to me about no block, no Moorish village, no none of that. Because it's not going to politically, nationally work out for posterity. It's just not. You know what I mean? So, bro, that's what I have to say about that in that aspect. It's crazy because, like I said, when we talk about being aboriginal to the land and those who escheat this land, it goes deeper than just the land itself because they'll steal jewels from the ancestors who passed and sell their intellectual property for dirt cheap. I mean, super dirt cheap. Mm-hmm. And then if nobody else buys it, they'll buy it dirt cheap, even at a lower price, and then sell it for thousands. And they still get more finance off of our ancestors' ancestral estate than we would see. You know what I mean? Because they already know generally they're not going to, you know what I mean, try to deceive anybody in the flesh, but when they try to sell those antiques and things like that online, they get it popping on the price. They really do.
For real.
So I just wanted to shout out to Brother Kush because that's a highlight of one of my first experiences of an estate sale and what I was able to walk away with. And the fact that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even have seen this mantis table that's made out of all copper. And you know, as Aboriginal Moors, copper is our element. That's our thing right there. You know what I mean? So I'm like, yo, this is these are some unique signs of the times, bro. These are definitely some unique signs of the times as far as I'm concerned. The revelations that I am having now and what I've had over the past couple of weeks, it's just amazing. It's amazing. And like I said, even when it comes to some of the aspects of the lowest of fallen humanity, like you have sisters who are genuinely good people, but they're just in that fear state of, you know, what they of certain aspects of relationships. Brothers want to control them. Brothers want to own them. Vice versa, you have some sisters who are possessive and things like that. But within that comes the level of threat to whereas, you know, they will offer some services of their body parts for fiat and feel as though that they're obligated to give it to somebody else outside of themselves. And I'm like, and y'all who think y'all are buying it is sick because the reality is this. It's like a Ferris wheel. I was speaking to the brother Minka about this. It's like a Ferris wheel. Certain things you buy and you can take with you. You can't buy, you know what I'm saying, a sexual experience because all it is an experience. You can't take it with you. You can't go nowhere with it. You can't put it on display. You can't do anything with it. It's just an experience. It's gone when it's over with. And it's just like to see that those attributes of fallen humanity still exist, bro. And you still try to see the good in everybody. I don't know. Some of these things just have you questioning, like, will everybody, you know, be able to come back? And you gotta damn near be a psychologist to make the shit happen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
You better be a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
You better be one.
Thanks, bro. So yeah, bro. Those were just a few of my revelations. But yeah, and it's another thing that bugged me out about this estate sale. Now mind you, we're going back in next week and we're going to be talking a lot more facts. But I feel like I just got to catch the fam up on, you know, what some of the things are that I've realized since the last time we actually been on the air. And like I said before, I'm only going to really speak for my life experience at this point in time because I find it to be very interesting, not narcissistic, but the shit that be happening. And I just be like, man, I don't know if I'm tripping or is this being put in the perspective to show me something for us all, like what's happening. So, you know, yeah, so one of the things I learned, because the sister was Moorish of this particular estate sale, right? We didn't know at first, but I was so sure when we seen like what she had for a wardrobe, because like everything is open for sale when they get the probate involved and all of that involved. And then I was like, well, this European came up to me and he asked me, he was like, do you know the woman that used to live here? And I'm like, well, you know, out of all people, I'm a brown-skinned, melanated Moor in the flesh. I'm like, what would make him feel like he had to ask me of all people, you know what I'm saying, have I ever been here? I mean, excuse me, do I know the woman who lived here? And at that particular point in time, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure she's a Moor because they know she was a Moor. They could tell based off of the artwork, all of that. And of course, we've seen some pictures that was left behind and things like that. So, but that was later, like after we found out just off of the energy, like, yeah, she had to be a Moor. But yo, bro, that blew my mind to see a mantis in real life and then see a mantis through artwork. Now, this is something else interesting about the mantis is the mantis usually thrives in tropical regions, right? I'm from what they generally call on an indigenous level, the Lenape area, you know, so-called New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and I'll go so far to say so-called even Lenape. You know what I mean? That's a so-called name. Or Appalachian and whatnot. But at any rate, you know what I mean? These creatures are supposed to be thriving in so-called tropical regions. And this goes back to how we know even the weather pattern is flipping and changing today because, you know, of course, when it's hot, it's a tropical climate. You know what I mean? But, you know, to see them in certain times of the year, you be like, I don't know, you know? So we know the history and the knowledge that's been left behind. I would suggest that anybody read The Light of Egypt, because it goes into how the earth poles shift and the climate changes over the years. You know what I'm saying? The Europeans call it global warming and all of that, but it's just natural process, and it is not anything new. It really isn't. So they're all scared because they're like, oh, well, this ice is going to flood and that's going to flood. But this is the process nature has been going through since inception. So, it's just an interesting thing to see so-called tropical animals and tropical birds and tropical insects in a region, you know what I mean, that they allegedly don't belong in. That's another revelation I had about the mantises, that these are the signs of the times. Shit is changing. You know what I'm talking about, more. So, yeah, well, with that, I yield the floor over to you for a minute.
Islam, more. Well, give thanks for that build. Give thanks for that. Good to get your perspective always. Just going back to the honors to MHHS for the 12 years.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate didn't get to really touch onto one of those, but
that's hard though. I mean, it's not all right, but I do understand.
Yeah.
But remind you though, this is not the end of
it.
Yeah,
It's not over. It's not over. This venue that these classes have been happening at is going to be over. But stuff's still going to be going on for sure. And that's really where it's at for those people who, that was a 12-year ritual that they were doing. Wednesday night, there's not that place to go to. You know what I mean?
I know, bro.
And it's also a detox for them to go look within.
It is, bro. It is.
You know what I mean?
And it's a necessary. At the same time, it is necessary. Like I said I was talking to Red last night at the class, and I was saying, he was going back to even when they started off at Soul Brothers. Even before that, when it started off on the pavement, and he was attesting to how it changed the whole wave of so-called consciousness, even out on 125th. That's no joke. You feel me? The Moorish information really did that. You know what I'm saying? Boots on the ground. Nobody can ever take that away. That's what happened. My mother, Nature, El Bay, and Taj, and other Moors, you know what I'm saying, from time to time, will be out there, boots on the ground, pitching tents, pitching tables, waking people up. You know what I'm saying? And that evolved into that whole cycle to where millions of people have awakened off of this. My mother touched on that last night, and I was telling Brett, I'm like, well, look, man, if you think about it, if you could go back that far, you know what I'm saying, 12 years, right, then all we really got to do is just basically see this as like a halftime. Because if, we was to do a 25-year recap, like 12 years from now would be 24 years. Then the year after that, we could do a 25-year recap and see how we took it from the street corner, not the street corner, but the city blocks into venues, multiple venues. And now it's basically halftime to go up and turn up the teachers a notch. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to let my mother make the announcement for the next venue, but when we have the possibility, the potential, and security to do next, it's going to be worth people coming from everywhere to come see what we're going to be doing.
For real.
You know, understand? I'm not tuning too much until she's ready to talk about it, but do understand, like, it's not the end. You're going to see more. You're going to see more over the next 12 years, higher quality productions from RV Bay Publications, Moore's Heritage and History School, etc. You know what I'm saying? And the vision we have for the next 12 years is not a bad one from what I'm seeing, what we could do from here, because it's not an end of us stopping the information or, waking up the masses. It's just an end of a specific cycle. You understand? Yeah, and you couldn't ask for it no better way. Like I said, I don't, I'd rather have my mother speak on this because I don't know, she might feel like, nah, I want to do this, but at this other venue or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But still decent enough to be there. And it's just going to be an attestation to our growth. If we was to do a 25-year recap of what was actually done, what the generation behind it came up and could do and will do all together. So that's why I'm saying, it's not a quote unquote bad thing. It's just time for a new cycle to begin. And what we have access to now, again, is going to be work people coming from any and everywhere to come see what we're going to put on. I'll say this. I know my pen has been challenged. My pen has definitely been challenged. I know people, talk about swinging scimitars and all that. But look, the pen is mightier than the sword. My pen has been challenged. And, to this day, I don't see anybody standing a chance with a sword versus a firearm. And I'm not promoting violence. I'm just saying, you can swing a physical sword. That doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't mean anything in these days. It's about the metaphysics of the pen being mightier than the sword to leave your message. And that's just where we at. So I could say this, you definitely now, you're going to get more books. You're going to get more playwrights. You're going to get more screenwrites. So stay, stay in tune, because it ain't like, it's that. We're not going to hear anything from NHHX, and we're not going to hear anything from RV Bay Publications and Nancy's Views and Canaanland. No, we are about to turn up to another degree of teaching. It's just like, you go to college and you get some subjects, it takes 8 years for you to obtain your degree. You know what I mean? And you have to write your dissertation and get your master's and things like that. Or to get your degree, whatever it is. But that's basically all this is. It's just a transformation into a higher realm of teaching. And I'll leave it at that for right now.
So before the higher level of teaching, there was 12 years of learning for anybody who was willing to want to learn. And, being affiliated has made us be greater because of the influence that MHHS has on Moors who affiliate with us as far as Canaanland Moors. Moors who vibrate with us just because we rep with RV Bay Publications, just because we rep with MHHS, just because we rep with Great Seal, just because we rep with Moors Order of the Round Table, just because we rep with Journal of the Moorish Paradigm, Moorish Civil Letter, and all of these connections happen through RV Bay Publications. Because we didn't just look at it as these are some people with a website. You know, like we really saw that as a depository. We saw that as the second library. When you can't go to the library, you just go to rvbaypublications.com. You don't have to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, at that time, you can go online and you can get a Black's Law for 30 notes, 20 notes.
Right, though. Exactly.
Yeah. Edition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Cheap. Sitting there. The most you might pay is 60 notes. You go check how much a law dictionary is right now. Somebody had a question, but I'm gonna answer first, and then you could answer after. Brother Jeremy Bay was asking, how does it feel for YouTube Moors to be positive contributors of Moorish history and heritage? Well, I mean, again, for myself, you know, we're only contributors because of Moorish Heritage and History School. You know, if there was none of that, we wouldn't be contributors in the capacity that we are, because we directly came out of that school. Like, that was our place to go to learn. You know what I mean? 09, 2010, 2011, like, when anybody we engage, no matter who it is, no matter email, whatever type of message that they send, phone calls, before we even have any conversation, you're going to this website right here and you're going to go study for a week or 2 weeks. Call me after 2 weeks. If they call back, you know that they went on it and they studied.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because they're going to come back with real questions.
Mm-hmm.
Not only questions of how to get out of something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They would have real questions relative to their Moorish history and heritage.
Indeed.
Physical or metaphysical.
Yep.
You know? Yep. So it's not a position of you know, not knowing that this would be the position. You know, like, we've been in training to be in this position right here.
Right.
Going through all the different schools of thought was part of getting here. And, you know, RV Bay Publications was a vortex.
Yeah.
You know, that put us into a realm of studying where, I mean, talk for myself, I've never turned back to how stuff used to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because what I got from there was mind altering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after you start digesting what's being presented, and again, from this source that it's free, you don't have to sign up for nothing, you don't have to create a password for nothing, you don't have to make no donation or whatever. You know, they got some books on there you could buy if you want to, but you're not obligated to go buy some books off there. They got so much information on there, you can make your own book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a very humbling place to be, even though we know this is what it's been about. You know what I mean? It's good to be around people who put in that type of work, whose words, works, and deeds, you actually have a timeline to track that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not some human artificial reality, where if you don't save something, you can lose it if the stuff crashes or whatever.
Exactly.
We're talking about hands-on boots to the ground. Not talk about boots to the ground. Actually there. Your lace might get untied. You have to kneel down right there and lace the boots right there on the ground.
Right. Exactly. And you know, it's funny you say that, bro, because the question was about how does it feel to be positive contributors to the family. Pardon me, I'm paraphrasing the question.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You know what I mean? But it's, to me, it's amazing. And I tell you, the first time I realized, like, oh shit, I'm like, we're making an impact on people just outside of the so-called immediate circumference, right? Is when it was either this time or the year before, because we had went to so-called, matter of fact, yeah, we went to so-called Cincinnati. You did a class in so-called Cincinnati. I think that was 2015 or 2016.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Somewhere around there, right? And we had stopped in so-called Pittsburgh on the way. And then the next year, you did a class out in so-called Pittsburgh. And we just went to Pittsburgh that time. We didn't go to so-called Cincinnati. And you know, for me, the first time where I realized, like, oh shit, we're making an impact in a lot of different places is on that particular journey. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, I personally, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't putting myself out there like that to be like, oh, you know, I'm noticeable on spot. But what happened was I was talking to somebody while we was out in so-called Pittsburgh, and they was like, yo, are you Ms. Rain? And I'm like, yeah. You know what I mean? How you know? And they was like, nah, I just heard your voice. And I'm like, oh, you sound like Miss Rain on MHHS. And I'm like, oh shit, it's people really paying attention. You know what I'm saying? But like, you know, so you don't even, I know I wasn't even thinking of it like, yo, we're making a so-called positive impact, or even a negative one. It's like, yo, we're making an impact because, you know, it just happens to show up in life, because when we were and are, you know, depositing facts on this particular record, you know what I'm saying? I'm just looking at it like we don't get to see each other's face like that. You know what I mean? Not that we couldn't, but we never did this for notoriety. We never did this for fame or any of that. You know what I'm saying? We was trying to get a message to the people. But when you just on that humble frequency, and then you realize, like, oh shit, you know, I've never been to Pittsburgh or Cincinnati in my life, but people out here know who I am. That's a whole different feeling. I don't know if everybody has felt that before, but you know, it wakes you up to another degree in life. Like, oh shit, like we are really reaching people. You know what I'm saying? And for me, that was just like, oh, okay. Now it's definitely time to take our messages serious, because, you know, we're in the times where people could know you by voice without ever seeing your face. So now you have to be, you know, alert to different things. It's good to know that you're making an impact, but it's a different thing when you're like, oh, people know me that I don't know, that I've never seen in my life. They can identify me just off of me saying, excuse me. You understand? That's a different feeling. Like, that shit is crazy, Jeremy Bay. Like, I don't know how to describe that. You know what I'm saying? But it's not to be arrogant or vainglorious at all. It's just like real facts. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it is a lot of lessons in that on its own merit of making an impact on the world or on the people or anybody who has ears to hear and eyes to see what it is that we are trying to communicate and show and prove. So, like I said, I was at the class last night, and a brother came up and he said he was from Orlando. You know what I'm saying? And you know, he knew me, and I never seen a brother before in my life. This was just last night. You know what I'm saying? And he said, thanks to me, thanks to my mother, thanks to Anna Eve, thanks to Canaanland Moors. And these are testimonies that I got from everybody who showed up from the last class at the theater or for halftime. You know what I'm saying? And it just was like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? So I don't know how to explain that feeling, bro. Like it's just different because even when you're not even trying to be like, well, you know, I'm the face of this or I'm the face of that. Just people paying attention and listening, and they're like, yo, I resonate. Your message resonates, and they never seen your face before. They just know. I've been at concerts. And you know what I'm saying? People have came up out of the clear blue. I've never seen it there in my life. You feel me? And like, yo, you miss Ryan? That shit is scary. But these are some of the genuine people that we are good with today. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? This particular aspect of life and living and putting yourself and your message out there. You know what I'm saying? To the point where, you know, you could be out in public and people like, oh, that's him, and you intentionally tried to stay out of the public view, but people know you. You feel me? That's a different lifestyle. Like, that's crazy because you looking at people like, I'm looking at you like, you know, you think you know me? You know what I'm saying? And I ain't talking about if you think you know me from kindergarten. I'm talking about, you know what I mean? I'm looking at you to see how you looking at me because I don't know who you are and you might know who I am. That's crazy. You know? And, yo, real talk though, bro. That's the type of shit you talking about. So,
that's real.
Yeah.
That's that celebrity status. Why people got entourage and shit.
Like I don't even like to call it celebrity status, bro. People have to want the shit to be so-called celebrities or YouTube celebrities. We waking and talking to people who need these messages and who can relate to what we're saying right now because they know what we're saying is facts.
Straight.
You understand? And those who've been there from day one know what we're talking about. I'm sure there's multiple more specifically. So, you know, Facebook way, because mind you, I don't move with a Facebook as of now, Instagram, any of that, just YouTube videos. And anybody who really check out Nature's Views 29, you know, one of my best qualities is editing and producing opposed to trying to be on the camera all the time. You feel me? But I can do that and bomb a message if I wanted to. You feel me? But that's not where I was at with it. So when you're like, yo, I don't want to be, I want to, like you feel like, yo, I just want to go out in public and just be that, you know what I mean? You don't pay me no mind. I'm just nobody to you, but the shit don't happen like that. And then you be like, oh, this is what it is, whether I like it or not. So you might as well just embrace it all. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, it ain't even about notoriety and things like that. Yeah. It's about, for me, when we started this, I'm like, okay, I want to talk to the people and make sure we wake people up today. But these messages, if you go back from 2013 and HHS Eyes Wide Open to today, you know, you can see that my intentions was to make sure that people have reference points and that the children who are, you know, children now, by the time they hit so-called adulthood, you know what I mean, 16, 21, etc., they're like, oh, yeah, you know what I mean? I can see why these messages were important, why the references was given, why this is relevant, even in the future. So, yeah, we project it now, but it's for the future. And with that, well, I yield the floor. I don't know what else to say. I try to describe it, but I just can't. You know what I mean?
It's all good. More. There was a couple more questions that I got that I was able to write down.
All right.
Another one was, how far back have you traced Moorish history in your research?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a very good question. Let me say. But I think we got to put the word more in perspective first, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, people think of Moorish history and then try to give it like equivalence with like Spain history. But if I was to trace Spanish history, that would lead me right back into the history of Moors because it was Al-Andalusia. But when we talk about Moors in the context of the word Moor, meaning, you know, any dark-skinned person, you know, of Moorish origin or with skin brown like that of the Moor, of a Moor, you know, then we could trace our lineage back millenniums, you know what I mean? Eons, like polar days, you know. So I find that I don't personally think there's enough history to go back far enough. There's not enough history. It gets to a point where you go so far back, now you have to start explaining the divine because you be like, okay, well, we could document we was on this planet, this part of the planet Earth because of this specific evidence, such as hieroglyphs and things like that. But then you be like, well, damn, you know what I'm saying? Somebody had to think of that, right? And then manifest it. And then man is mind. So then you'd be like, well, damn, you know what I'm saying? Well, then when did man or mind manifest itself here? What was that thought? You know what I'm saying? So then you start getting into the fact that, you know, the degrees Noble Drew Ali left was supreme when he said in chapter 1 of the creation and fall of man, there never was a time when man was not. So then you have to ask yourself, well, when the fuck did timing start existing? Because, you know, if there never was a time that man was not, what do you mean? How far can we trace back Moorish history? Because we as a people, there is no time that we were not here. So, you know, we can go back and say, well, you know, we read books like History of the Moorish Empire in Europe. It starts at 25,000 BC. But then when we think about it never being a time when man was not, that don't even seem too long ago.
Yep.
So I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's enough. There is no such as going as back into Moorish history. Like, there's a beginning and a start date. The shit is from the beginning. Like, there is no time you can pinpoint because time is modern throughout the ages of men existing. So when we talk about tracing Moorish history back, you're talking about tracing melanated brown skin, dark brown, copper complexion, any one of the various copper complexion people's existence back to a time, a so-called time, when time didn't even exist. So if you put that in perspective, you can't go back far enough. There is no damn time you can go into when we didn't exist. You know what I'm saying? And I think that basically was a suggestion or affirmation Noble Drew Ali was giving to us in the first chapter of the Circle 7. There's no, you can't go back far enough. You know what I
mean? Yeah, and I would conclude it there as well. That's where I was gonna go with it. That, you know, the furthest back till we go is not being on this planet. So if it goes back that far, then it's really about the now. You know, and where are we going? Because once you get to that place, you realize that you are the history. You know how far back the history goes, is the history is right now.
Right.
Like, we are the history.
Yeah.
We are the living manifestation of our ancient foremothers and forefathers. We're here again to carry out the works that has to be carried out, because obviously it wasn't done or we wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it, bro.
Brother Combs Bay also brought up the concept of the flag being 10,000 years old. So even with Noble Drew Ali as a reference point, he's at least taking you back 10,000 with regard to Moorish history.
At least 10,000. But then when you read J.A. Rogers, Sex and Race, Volume 1, 2, and 3, and I'm not sure if I'm right, but it's either Volume 1 or Volume 3, where he's dug up the history where, a dark-skinned race inhabited what is called the United States for hundreds of thousands of years. So Noble Drew Ali was being liked to wake up, to just get people thinking on a mathematical timeline that supersedes your lifespan and your grandma's lifespan and your great-grandma's lifespan, to connect you back to the fact that you've been here for thousands of years. But there's also historians of that relative time frame who was digging up the information like, yo, no, hold up, we've been here hundreds of thousands of years. It's like, if you read a book like The Light of Egypt, you know what I'm saying? There's certain numbers that are incomprehensible to some people, right? And they can't fathom the numerical thought of certain numerology, specifically when we put that in the context of the science of the number 9. And I have a video on Mantis Views 29, with Brother Shabazz going in on Moors, niggas, God, devil, black, and colors. And in that video, the way it was edited, I put the mathematical chart up of what a day is. So you'll hear some of those who have the wisdom from olden times tell you that a day is 1,000 years, but they're being light with you because they know that they'll start sounding off the chain if they tell you, well, a polar day is 2,592,000 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, your brain can't compute that. Some people's brains can't compute that. Let me say that. But nonetheless, 1,000 years is just a microcosm of how much time a polar day really is. But to get you to think outside of 24 hours being a day, you know what I'm saying? You have to, break it down with different numerics. So I say that to say this. Noble Drew Ali wasn't exaggerating when he said 10,000 years. Your flag goes back 10,000 years. You go to Ellis Island, they'll tell you for tens of thousands of years, people have so-called migrated or traveled to the Americas from Africa and Asia, right? Not that they aren't the same people as the Aboriginal people in America, but if you know the science and the historical context Noble Drew Ali was speaking from, when he said that the flag is 10,000 years old, and you can go to Ellis Island this very day, and they'll tell you that tens of thousands of years ago, people were migrating to the Americas. And you put that in perspective that, well, God damn it, European pilgrims don't even have 1,000, not 1,000. They're talking about tens of thousands of years ago, people migrating to the Americas. That's what they say. Tens, plural, of thousands, plural, years, plural, ago, people migrate to the Americas. So you say, okay, well, then who was those people? Who were those people? Who were those travelers? You know what I'm saying? Who was here. It wasn't Europeans. It wasn't the pale skinned nations of Europe, because as their history reflects, you know what I'm saying? They came not even 1,000 years ago, 1492. We're talking 500, 600 years, not even. You know what I'm saying? So there's a history in the Americas, no matter who that had been, of people coming here way before the Europeans. And this is public record at Ellis Island. So I don't see that as a student who studies everything, including history, as being a far-fetched claim when Noble Drew Ali says the Moors flag is over 10,000 years old and it was in the Americas. And that does not mean that we all migrated from so-called Africa, and that's how we all got here. But nonetheless, if you study law in certain places, you know, after 30 years, you have a claim of possession. After 30 years, you definitely have a claim of possession. So we've been here, when you talk about tens of thousands of years ago, you know what I'm saying? That's more than a substantial claim of possession. And that's just basically what it is. So that being the case, I can conclude that it's not a myth. The history it backs up what Noble Drew Ali was saying. Why? Because people would be like, oh, well, you're not supposed to hate people based off the color of the skin. And you're not. You know what I'm saying? But you are supposed to make distinguishments. And Noble Drew Ali was able to do that because in his literature that he divinely prepared, he tells you about the pale skinned nations of Europe, though. You know what I'm saying? He said the pale skinned nations of Europe. So he was able to make the distinguishment based off of as well the genetic phenotype, the genetic skin type, DNA of these different people who are not the same. On the face, you know how certain records is void on the face? Well, on the face of everything, you know what I'm saying? They knew that we were not the same people, and they was treated accordingly back in those days. Oh, you got brown skin, you don't pass the brown paper bag test. You know what I'm saying? According to your brown skin, you're classified as a Negro. Meanwhile, your cousin has maybe, let's say, 4 shades lighter than you, and they could be classified as white just based off of their skin tone, when it was never about that. White and black were statuses of certain nobility bloodlines. So just like your cousin who may have been 4 shades lighter than you with your brown skin will be classified or maybe be able to pass as white or mulatto because of their skin complexion. You know what I'm saying? They knew that this had a substantial relevance in law with identity, right? Because identity is in the law of evidence. And the evidence was showing that, it is showing that based off of, your skin complexion, they can know the difference between you and them, specifically when they came into a quasi position of power. This was one of the main things that we had to be concerned with was identity, because they started stripping and stealing ours back in 1774. And I'm sure before they officially did it in 1774, it was already a thought that was being practiced. And then they just made it official in 1774. But believe you me, like, they knew that if they could get you to think that they're Americans and they are not, that you're not American and you are, regardless, you know what I'm saying? Because, again, there's not a syllable, a sound, or any of that the European actually invented when it comes to the place names of the continents of the planet Earth. You know what I'm saying? Even if they jacked it, it still was a relative appellation that Moors had laid out. You know what I'm saying? And basically, that's what that is. Before Yeah, more so. That's basically where that is. And in the midst of that is no way, if you go visit a place and study with your eyes wide open, or even if you got your mind's eye wide open and you just use your two fleshy eyes to communicate messages to that eye, your mind's eye, you understand, impartially, just between you and what you see, you will quickly come to the conclusion that America has been popping in the center of civilization for tens of thousands of years, which is undeniable for the record, and they know this.
And then there was one more question. 11:30. If I have a business in the straw name and then nationalize, do I keep the business in the name and use it from an agent ex-relation perspective, or do I bring the business onto the free national name side?
I would say this. That depends on you. You know what I mean? Because I'll say this. Hold up, one sec.
Yeah, man.
You know. Look at how different businesses move and are thriving today. Remember, take a business or a corporation like TD Bank, right? Present day TD Bank used to be Commerce Bank. Same owner, same all of that, just a name change. So Wells Fargo, another example. It used to be Wachovia. When they changed to Wells Fargo, like in 2007, 8, or 9, or something like that, roughly about 10 years ago, their whole motto was Wachovia is now Wells Fargo. So look at how different businesses move. Look at how different corporations move. They'll let you know how they're moving and the importance of a so-called name change or name correction or whatever it is. You understand? Likewise, ours has, as natural people, more significant spiritual reasons for it because, like Noble Drew Ali said, you know, you do all new business in your free national appellation.
Exactly.
Right? That's what you really want to do. Do all new business in your free national appellation. But if you got contracts and you're tied up in that, you know what I'm saying, you would have to do a lot of amendments to the contracts you already have, you know, or agreements that you already have so that the other parties you're involved with can have good faith and standing to whereas, you know what I'm saying, they can, you know, not have to be in doubt about you. Because, like, even when, like, think about it, right? We all know, right? Okay, so Wachovia came out when they changed their name to Wells Fargo. It's not that Wells Fargo didn't exist. It's a history that goes with it. If you study so-called Wachovia and the Moravians, even if you just study so-called Cherokee or North Carolina Aboriginal people, you'll understand where this appellation came in as far as the origins of it, of Wachovia, and then why they changed it to Wells Fargo, because they seen 10 years before the shit was already about to hit the fan. It was already about to hit the fan when the 401ks and all of that collapsed back in like 2008, and then the situation with like Bernie Madoff and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like they already knew shit was about to come crashing down. So that's why they switched up to Wells Fargo. But Wells Fargo was a corporation back when, in the 1800s. But even with Wells Fargo, even after they changed their appellation, what you're seeing happen was a lot of sanctions that came down on them for a lot of their as cheating, bank fraud, etc. John Stumpf had to retire, what was it, like 1 or 2 years ago or something like that, because of all of the bank fraud of Wells Fargo, which really wasn't just based off of them being Wells Fargo. It had a lot to do with the shit they was doing when they was calling themselves Wachovia Bank. It just was Wells Fargo was the straw man they created to take their hit. You understand? And that's what happened. And, you know, they had a lot of magistrates who are shadow government, actually. You know, and they all had their pockets lined and their palms greased. So this is why you had certain Moors going up with their mortgage and land claims, and these U.S. district court magistrates, so-called, was coming out with slanderous opinions about Moors. It's because they all had their pockets lined, and they all come from the same families that was escheating Moors' ancestral estate. You understand? So I say that to say this: as far as name changes, business goes, you might need to study business a little bit more. I don't really want to say the wrong thing, so I'll leave that to you to do your studies and your due diligence as far as what you should do with your business. Because if it's yours and you do own it, because like I said earlier, you can't own anything until you own your name. And if you bear another nationality name, like if you bear a European name, you never own a business any goddamn way. So don't even talk about ownership, you know what I mean, of your business, because you can't outright flat up allodially own it if you gotta pay contributions or what they call taxes to an outside source who doesn't provide protection for you or your people or your natural national family, because that never was their intention, as they took that Ku Klux Klan OC and Bay went in on all of this. You know what I mean? Revisit that and then see why, you know, it's important to do all new business in your free national name. And that'll be my words of wisdom on that particular subject.
No.
That's with the floor on that subject matter.
There's a lot more. Anybody else got something out there? Right now we're topping up at, what is it right now? 11:41.
11:41, bro.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this was a good welcome back. This was definitely a good welcome back. You know what I mean? Oh, there was a question. Huh?
Nah, I'm tweaking. I'm looking at some of the comments in the comment section.
Oh.
Comment. Shout out to Indian. He said it became Wells Fargo. Well, not Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo.
Yeah, bro.
Well, before that one, there was a question about what's the take on divorce and amending the marriage contract?
Divorce and amending a marriage contract. I don't know, man. Like, show me the marriage contract, because you made a personal agreement. I don't know how you did that, if you went to City Hall or what you did, because you don't have to have a specific ceremony, because I grew up, you know, I'm not like, you know, I have nothing against commitment and unison and matrimony and all of that, but I never really had to deal with the aspects of a marriage contract, because I was put on game early. You know, you get a marriage contract, that's not nothing between you and your significant other or the woman that you love, etc. That's a contract between you, her, and the state. You know what I'm saying? So as far as the actual marriage contract, you know what I'm saying? I am under the impression that there may be a multitude of those because I've never seen, you know, an actual contract except the oral oath. You know what I'm saying? Or owls of, you know, I do take this woman to lawfully, legally be my wife, and you know, the preacher says all of this by the power of the state vested in him or her or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I go into all of that early, but I do understand that, you know what I'm saying? There is an aspect of it being a binding thing, whereas you invite a third party into a natural commitment or a natural union. And, you know, I don't know, as far as the divorce goes, I mean, I was taught by one of my elders, and I leave it at this. I'm going to say something else, but I do want to leave it at this.
Yeah.
I was taught by my elders that there's a lot of reasons to get married, and love is not one of them. You understand? And some deep shit.
Yeah, that's heavy. That's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah. So,
wow.
You know, but if you got like a genuine attraction that you both know is universally ordained, like Allah is smacking you with each other's presence when you don't intend to, and always putting you in this situation where you see this person and you don't intend to, and all of those things, and you start to realize, like I did, the great divine is speaking to me in these signs, and I know it's something or anything of that nature, or it just feels right and it goes right and it's been going right for years. You can draft up your own contract without ever getting them involved. And I more so would be in tune to have wisdom about, you know, those types of proposals, because that's still a contract just between you and your significant other. You know what I'm saying? Y'all can make your own agreements, just like you can make your own agreements for contracts with somebody to do work on your house. You know what I'm saying? You can independently contract. You and a woman can independently draft up a contract to make a committed agreement. You know what I'm saying? With stipulations, whereas if any of these things are violated, you understand, then that gives grounds to the other party to break the contract. But I don't know, besides the marriage certificate itself and the vows, I've never actually seen a marriage contract, you know what I'm saying, where it has laid out conditions, where it has laid out stipulations and just considerations and adequate considerations. It's all based in deceptions of a third party. So, you know what I mean? I really don't know how to clearly answer that question, but I trust what I'm saying is sufficient to get you thinking enough to put yourself on the right path. You know what I mean?
Islam.
And that's really, yeah, because as the divine scriptures say, you know, only Allah can wed two souls, and he who tries to bind two souls together commits a sin. So, you know, outside of the divine laws, the holy and divine laws, I don't know what else to say, because I didn't grow up on anything else. I don't know anything else. I just don't. I don't know. I told you I was brought up on this young, bro. So I more so put my energy into the truth side of it, whereas everything is a low to you. If it's real, it's real. And you both can agree that it's real, then the shit is real. But, you know, if they're saying that y'all are together based off of a middleman who is saying that, y'all are lawfully or legally binded based off of the power that was vested in him, not by God, not by Allah, not by the Creator, but by the state, then you already know what time it is.
Yeah.
Like, you know it's not natural law. You know what I'm saying? In the union of male and female, or man and woman, is natural. It's nothing outside of that. You know what I'm saying? So outside of that, I don't know. Natural law is the supreme law, or the most superior law. Bottom line. So when you do get the marriage license, understand that is exactly how the children from inception or birth is already esteemed wards, even though you may think it makes sense legally, because again, like I said, one of my elders told me, there's a lot of reasons to get married, and love is not one of them. And if you have, you could get certain passes, and you can get certain acknowledgments as a unit together, whether you love each other or not. Like, some people get married because they have certain businesses that are compatible, and they can bring in a lot of wealth and be entitled to share that wealth. Well, not wealth, but let's just say fiat. You know what I'm saying? Together. So for the record, they'll get legally married, but it ain't because they love each other. It's because, there's financial shit that goes with that. You know what I'm saying? So love each other enough to say, yo, I need, you enough to legally get this off, and you need me to get that off. And this is why it makes sense for them in specific situations to get married. But outside of that, if you don't understand the legal implications, then, now you're dealing with a falsehood. Like, it ain't like you go get married and now, because the state or a priest said y'all married, that, this is the ultimate conclusion or apex of your love being solidified. No, that's something totally different. Not on a lawful end, but a legal end. It's a legal procedure. It's not a lawful one. It's not a natural law one. You understand? So that's really what it is.
Islam. Well, with that, son of Islam to all the Moors out there. Doesn't look like there's any more questions. Peace and love to all the Moors. Don't forget, next Thursday, Sons of Allah, once again, we're gonna work on doing the log talk next week, and we might do this again too, because this is all right. doing the stream, because I know some people sometimes have issues with blog talk on their phones or whatever.
Yeah, so, shout out to all the live streamers in here too. Salute to all the Moors in the chat, bro. And again, we doing it in this format because we haven't been on it so long, and it's just how the creator had it manifest today. And again, shout out to MHHS.
Big shout outs. Big shout outs.
My mother, Roz Mariah. We just had to do it like this tonight. I like it though, because seeing the chat and seeing y'all going in on some agents in the chat. y'all. And you know what I mean? Like, this was really dope. So I trust, however we got to do it. If we could do these off the cuff, even if we can't do, 2-3 hours next time.
Yeah.
We could do these more on your channel a little more often, bro.
Right.
I appreciate you. Thanks indeed.
Thank you.
No question.
So until you got any updates for any moving forward updates?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say this for right now. I know for a fact there's going to be a lot of announcements at the beginning of October. I want to announce some things, but I just can't yet. There's some things I just cannot announce right now, but you will hear this being announced throughout October. etc. going into November. So I just want to say this. It is not the end of giving classes and teaching anything like that, you know, as far as everyday publications is concerned, as far as MHHS, Eyes Wide Open, Sons of Allah, etc. We still here. We still gonna keep going in, and there will be a physical locale, whereas you can show up and enjoy, you know, the company of free Moors in the flesh. You know what I'm saying? For any Negroes or niggas who think you will show up to be adversaries, you will quickly learn a different lesson. That's not going to happen because we have something that we have to protect and preserve. But I'll say this, definitely stay tuned with Canaanland Moors, MHHS, Eyes Wide Open, Blog Talk, the brother Najib L's YouTube page, Everyday Publications, and Memphis Views 29, because definitely got some things to work on and put out there, because you asked me a question and I really want to answer that by showing what people themselves had to say.
Yeah, straight. Yeah, that'll be a good one.
Yeah, it's gonna be a compilation.
Yeah,
some people just don't real background behind the scenes type of info, and I'd love to share that with you all. And again, salute to all the Moors. We are the best people on the planet, and don't let anybody sell you short on anything else. I also want to give a shout out to the brother Set and Rye, because we're going to be taking a trip this Saturday. So again, I want to say, pay attention to Mantis Views 29.
Pay attention.
We have a lot of classics coming. We
Pay
have
attention.
a lot of classics coming. Yeah, pay close attention. You know what I mean? Because I could just throw up videos raw and uncut, but you know, we working over here.
Yeah.
And definitely gonna have a pristine, supreme message for you all. So that's what I have to say. And shout out to all of the Canaanland Moors. Y'all doing great work. Ain't nothing like hearing y'all musical tunes, bro. And I really do appreciate that. Sometimes you just gotta take it back and just get back to the lyrics, which y'all do. And y'all do that very well. So I want to say salute to that, because I don't know what life would be like without music. So salute
Straight
to
up.
all of you. Yeah, straight up indeed. Oh, and the brother Supreme, I definitely want to give a big acknowledgement to the brother.
Islam to brother Supreme.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to both record. We're gonna have to record partner.
Yeah. We might even just do it just like this, because you know how we do.
There you go. And all the Moors in the chat. Everybody who showed me, anybody I rock with, and my mother, the love, I really do appreciate y'all. Everybody else, if you feel any type of way, negative way, or whatever about us, go ahead and kick rocks with no shoes on, because you can't stop shit today, just like you couldn't stop shit back then. It's like Noble Jabali said, they might slow me down, but they will not stop me. We standing on those same prophecies today. So I don't care about none of you niggas in the most etymological sense of the word. You understand? That's what I mean. So peace to you all, fam.
Peace and Islam to all.
Yes. Oh yeah. And I'm gonna definitely next week, I know I mentioned some of it, but next week I definitely wanna quote from some information from this Alhambra book. But I had to touch on my real life experiences first, because I said I'm gonna speak on where I live off of experience, and then we're gonna convert that to real lessons in real life. So Moors, pay attention. Last thing I want to say is something I said earlier. I don't mean to be redundant, but I do mean this. Can't anybody tell you they're serious about history and not know anything about Moors. If they say they're a historian, a teacher, a scholar, or whatever, and they don't know about Moors, or they feign ignorance about Moors, just know that they're disqualified, because there's no way you can study history without studying Moors. It really is no way, specifically in a chronological order. You can't do it. It's impossible. So with that, again, salute to all Moors, and we will see y'all back soon, you know?
Islam, Moors.
It's always want to get you in. What? What? I'm rockets. Who says we ain't in the building? Who says we ain't in the building? We the Moorish master masons, architects for your children, rapping Friday 30s like Jason, without the killing. But we promote life, oh, it's all about the feeling. And we invoke light, yo, we them light beings. Though you might see him on the block getting this posture, might be talking to cops, giving them caution, occasionally wearing his fez when he's walking, see the turning heads, whispering, gawking, but he's locked in and he's zoned out while we boxed in our own house.
Study the mystics, the adepts, the magi, wisdom of the ancients can uncalcify as possible mission. Free mental numbness, extract the substance with minds of darkness. Use the source, don't care what some purport, as we know by being told man knows not. Many before the floor, souls got bought, placed in the devil's hands, ruled in the seven lands. To dogma rituals, Negro spirituals, brainwash subliminal, keep thinking to a minimal. They still criminal, in a world digital so pitiful. Mental survival so critical, it's visible. Can you see past righteous blocks? Hashtag zombies with waves of cyberpunk. No need for cell phones, they speak from soft arms. It's nothing for alarm, chips and forearm.
Wind, brass, and bass, such a beautiful serenade. Women feeding me grapes, I'm feeding the Henry serenade. Whether the sky is clear or gray, rain when you hear it fake, giving life to see. Streaking through when I hear the day. Show you the future in a glance. And I always look to these holes like hallucinatory depths. Sun walked the desert, been more of a since I found God. Look back, used to see his friends. Forget being a prince, I'm a G. OD grown man, no jokey, deny you don't know me. Don't make me tap into the old me. That's like a couple hundred years. Walk around town with a couple hundred peers and release the peace of fears. The sun gon' shine, so what fears? This young brother here just trying to get his third eye clear.
Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind, body, and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks. Conscious thinking and living and then attack. This deep. Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind, body, and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks. Conscious thinking and living and then attack.
So as the moon sets, the sun takes its place and spoons on blocks, inspired spots, fill spaces, real rats, who got cases, fire stain the corridors of flemo faces, game changers, rule benders and no pretenders, style benders, channel my vibe through the vibrant optic lenses, send a message to our veterans, soldiers up and get it in, we on our birds, we are merged subliminal beings, third eye seeing, still I participate unwilling.
They wanna break me, shake, break, me. Rolling with my name G, double OMG. SON is crazy for a minute that you think you could take me for a fool like a native to his land, being schooled by a foreign dude. Keep mistaking me, spotties on the roof in the dark trees. I be saying you mistaking me to better move for our market. Power is my tongue to resistance to target, revealing all lies and deceit on the market. Genocide carried out in pockets, I knock it down, bulldozer. David to Goliath, it's an exposure. Some big heads ruling and it's getting closer to your downfall. Round up on your soldiers.
Little homie, I was seeking a fortune, tired of misfortune. I just wanted a portion, everything that I never had, though I needed my portion. Blowing like porcelain, haters cracking the porcelain. Getting broke, tired of being broke. How we acquire hope is a teacher still as a dope, just to keep us afloat. Might as deep as the boat, bring us a lethal weapon. We want it to elope. When I speak up, I'm broke. Walk in the room with my aura feeling like heavy smoke. Feel like when they let me roll under my Louis fitted the semi-coat. Cause then we capture the kick the boy, yeah, the joke. The cost of living, higher profits and private prison. These little girls are studying body just to pay tuition. These little niggas studying niggas just to build addiction. It's like the snake can never end the breaking in the mission. I wanna free the world, but I'm one man. A couple ones like me and me one plan. I wanna free the world, but I'm one man. A couple one's light, meaning one glare.